Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Culture and Coffee podcast with me, Colin Ellis, for Monday, the 18th of September, 2023. And spring has sprung in Melbourne. It's been absolutely beautiful all weekend. It's been great. It's nothing like a bit of sunshine to bring a smile to people's faces and get you out in the fresh air and all of those other good things. So yes, I've enjoyed a couple of coffees outside, which has been just lovely, just lovely. I hope you've had a great week wherever you are in the world and whatever season it is for you. So today I'm going to be talking about Jimmy Fallon. Did you read about Jimmy Fallon? I'll get into that. Why we're seeing more and more stories about toxic culture, in the media. Now, this week's coffee is from Disciple Roasters. Now, my wife read an article, I think it was on the BBC, I want to say the BBC, about these kind of coffee places you must try in Melbourne. You know, kind of you read those things, like 5 things. Actually, I do these podcasts all the time. 5 tips to help you behave. But yeah, it's like 5 places you should go or something like that. And one of them is literally about a 7-minute walk from our house, and we didn't have a clue where it was. And we were just like, wait, what? That's literally across that road there and then behind that thing. So I went last week, and it's literally the garage. Like, it's what I love about big cities. I remember doing a podcast in Auckland, New Zealand. Oh man, it must be a year ago now, easily. And it was this little tiny coffee place that I found on a back street, and it's the same kind of thing. I remember going there, and it was just beautifully, kind of modern and sleek. It was just like, all these little places exist, and that's why I always say to people, when you're in another city, just go and find somewhere different. There's all these little independent places that need your business more than the big chains need your business. Go and seek out those little entrepreneurs who are just trying to make a difference, do something different. Anyway, so down this back street, Disciple Coffee Roasters, it's like in a converted garage. And it was just awesome. And the coffee was just fabulous. And so, yeah, Disciple Coffee Roasters, and they're in Brunswick in Melbourne. And I had the coffee that I've got, and here it is an Ethiopian Hadeso Guji. Now that the region it's from is Shakiso. Now Shakiso is the south of Ethiopia, so just kind of coming off those mountainous bits in the middle, probably a bit more towards Kenya, I would have thought, for those of you who know your geography. It's got notes of yellow peach, green grape, and tangelo. I don't even know what tangelo is. Should have. Oh, look, it's got the owner of the coffee plantation on here. I've never seen that before. Faisal A. Yonis. Faisal, if you're listening to this, which you won't be, but if you are, great job. This is delicious coffee. Hang on a sec. Oh my gosh, so good. So good. All right, enough of the coffee stuff. I know some of you don't even care about it. It's like, just skip past it. Just keep skipping. You'll stop talking about it in a minute. So Jimmy Fallon, let's talk about Jimmy Fallon. So Jimmy Fallon was in the news last week. I don't know if you saw it. Toxic culture allegations. Now, I had a question recently from someone who said, you never used to see this toxic culture stuff. And now I feel like there's a story in the paper every week, or in the media in the paper. That's showing my age, isn't it? In the media every week. And of course, there is a story in the media every week about toxic culture. Toxic culture is one of the biggest risks to organizational reputation. It's one of the biggest risks. And so if you're a senior leader listening to this podcast, my immediate question is to you, is what are you doing to de-risk it? I mean, so many examples of organizations. I'm going to give you a couple. Whose reputations have been absolutely trashed. Probably the highest profile one in the last 6 months is the Confederation of British Industry in the UK, which as an organization is practically on the brink of closure because of the allegations surrounding its culture. And it's purely its culture. Now, don't get me wrong, there's an individual who is at the heart of these allegations. But still, there are many people that walk past that behaviour and nothing was ever done. And what was interesting, I think I mentioned this before, but what was interesting when I was writing the book on toxic culture, which the first manuscript is done, I'm waiting for the editing process to start, is how complicit or apathetic HR were in toxic cultures. And I found that really interesting. And I'm doing a live webinar in a few weeks, so keep your eye out for that. If you're not signed up for the newsletter, so it's colindallis.com/boom. Sign up for the newsletter and you'll get early notification of some of these events that I'm doing. I'm going to be doing a webinar with a senior HR professional in the US and senior HR professional. So in the US is a government agency and a startup in Sydney in Australia. And, we're going to be talking about kind of HR's role in promoting culture. But we had a fascinating conversation just last week about that and about how HR really do need to raise their game. But senior leaders need to give HR more money, more autonomy, a seat at the table to be able to, kind of protect this reputational risk of toxic culture. Anyway, you're welcome, HR. Do you want to, get the CEO to listen to this? So last week in the media, Jimmy Fallon, there were allegations made by ex-staffers, kind of accusing him of creating a toxic workplace. Now, we've seen a lot of these, but there is almost one a week. So I think what one employee had said that they were, kind of in the lowest place in their life. One said that they didn't want to live anymore, that they thought about taking their life all the time. Another one said, why do I keep subjecting myself to this? And one alleged, I have to say that it's allegations. I'm not in the, to listen to this stuff, but they basically said, listen, if Jimmy's in a bad mood, everyone's day is effed. That's pretty much what they said. Which is not great, which is really not great. Now, initially, I don't think Jimmy Fallon said anything. And then he made a statement and he basically said that it's embarrassing. Well, it's a bit more than that. He went on to say, sorry if I embarrassed you, your family and your friends. Well, it's less a case of embarrassment and more a case of putting human beings in a position where they felt like, they had no meaning left in their life. I feel so bad I can't even tell you. Well, I want you to tell us, frankly. I want you to, I don't want you to, I can't tell you. I want you to think about how people feel. Listen, you don't have to necessarily agree with their opinion. I'll come on to this in a second. But still, I can't tell you how you feel. I don't know. He should be angry at himself, really. I want the show to be fun. It should be inclusive for everybody. It should be funny. It should be the best show, the best people. So all he's done there is talk about the show and himself. He's not actually talked about the working environment. Now, the same thing also happened with the Ellen show a few years ago. Do you remember that? The Ellen show. The same thing happened with the Kelly Clarkson show. But of course, toxic cultures aren't limited to entertainment shows. Practically everywhere. So let me just very, very quickly talk about how toxic culture arises. Because I still like to believe that toxic culture is rare. But I also know for a fact that organizations aren't doing enough to mitigate the risk of toxic culture occurring. So basically, toxic culture arises when the prevailing culture of the team is what I call consistently combatant. Combatant where everybody's at their heads, where bad behavior becomes normalized. There's lots of gossip. There's lots of backstabbing. There's rumors. There's overwork. There's no clear sense of prioritization. The work generally has purpose. We know why we're doing what we're doing, but we just allow people to behave in the worst way possible and then make excuses for it. Or I'm really busy. I'm under pressure. Anxiety, stress, harassment, bullying, all of these things become normalized in order for it to become toxic. And there's almost two levels, I would say, of toxic culture. You've got, when it becomes, it's corrosive and harmful. When it's corrosive, the toxicity bubbles to the surface. And so this is where people outside the organization as well as inside know about it, and they start talking about it. Right. And it may have made the media at that point, or at least the media are taking an interest in it. Somebody somewhere has passed a story to the media, say, hey, I don't know if you've heard about company X. This is what's going on there. And this is how the story of Sony Australia broke a few years back, and the ex-CEO, so if you just Googled Sony Australia and toxic culture, it started with whispers to the media because the culture was corrosive. And at that stage, as an organization, you've got a really, really, really short time period in which to take immediate action to do something about the allegations. All right. So that's when it becomes corrosive. The next level, and there's two types of toxic culture: corrosive, where it's just really, really bad, but you can still do something, and then harmful. And harmful is when there's literally no way back. There's widespread resignations, there's removal of senior leaders. People's lives are impacted in the worst way possible. It can be almost catastrophic at a personal level. So, I've worked with organizations where people have committed suicide, which is just awful, awful, awful. It's as a result of work, awful, terrible, where people have resigned in disgust. You've had mass resignations, you've had mass protests, and the organization's reputation gets trashed. Now, to answer the question is why we're seeing more of this in the media is because the world has changed. In the past, we weren't as humanistic in our businesses. In the past, what we did is we kind of put culture behind a brick wall in the hope that no one scaled the wall and could see it. Those walls don't exist anymore. I was speaking to a CEO recently. He was like, social media's, he didn't say blame. He said social media plays a big part in it. I was like, yeah, it does, because all of a sudden it's easier to tell people about stuff. Also, websites like Glassdoor, it's easier for you to post stuff. And we were having this conversation, excuse me, and the CEO said, oh, Glassdoor, all they do is post negative reviews. I was like, no, they don't. I was like, there's so many positive reviews. Cisco is one of my clients. I think they have a Glassdoor score of like 4.2. Red Bull, another client, I think their Glassdoor score is like 4.3 out of 5, not out of 50. These are really good scores. Like no company's ever going to have a score of 5 because you can't keep everybody happy all of the time. So yes, it's easier to disseminate this information, but mainly it's as humans, we're not going to stand for some of the crap that we've taken for years from some of these people in managerial positions. Not only in managerial positions, there are some people, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. There are some people who've just been obstinate for years. You're nodding your head now because you know what I'm talking about. And we're not going to stand for it anymore. Getting really cross. And it's about time that organizations did something about it. And, this is my point about mitigating the risk of toxic culture. You've got to be continually working on your culture to avoid these kind of scenarios where your culture becomes the topic of local, national, or global conversation. There's no better example of that than the Spanish Football Federation recently. Luis Rubiales still contests that he's completely innocent. And if you haven't read about all of the allegations, please go and read it. I could go in it. I can talk about it for hours. But the actual federation itself supported Rubiales, and then doubled down on that by saying they were going to sue the player. And all the time I'm thinking, who's advising them here? What are they thinking? Now, I've worked with one organization who've been the subject of toxic culture allegations, and there's a way to respond. There's a way to respond to toxic culture. In an ideal world, what you would do is make sure that you are mitigating the risk. So you're actually resetting your culture generally in line with your strategy. So every time you reset your strategy, then you're going to reset your culture. And yes, that means bringing people together. Yes, that means spending money. Yes, that means taking people out of the office. This is what all the great cultures do, right? They bring people together. Often I'll hear people say, oh, we need more collaboration. We need more collaboration. What people forget is it's human connection that drives collaboration, right? Human connection drives collaboration. So if you don't take the time to connect humans to each other, then you're never going to get collaboration. What do you think? It's just going to magically happen? It's not. It's not going to magically happen. You have to deliberately do it. But I just thought I would, kind of run through, what should be a good response. So a good response is, if you're, if there is a toxic culture allegation, we should tell the truth and be transparent as possible. Don't lie. Don't cover up. Don't, kind of use legal language. Don't try and confuse people. Kind of just be honest about what you know. If I was Jimmy Fallon, well, firstly, I wouldn't do this podcast, but no, I totally would. Of course I would. I have loads of time on my hand. What am I going to do? Sit at home, count my money and planning the show, obviously. But if I was Jimmy Fallon, I'd be coming out and saying, I am sorry. I am sorry that people feel this way. I feel personally responsible for this. And we are going to make sure that we investigate every single one of these allegations. And if my behavior is found to be the root cause or one of them, then I am going to ask for coaching. I am going to seek out help to help me better manage my own kind of personality, my communication style, and so on and so on. All right. But just be honest and, be transparent as you possibly can. The next thing really is you want people to lean into the problem. Be prepared to kind of hear things that you don't know, you don't understand, and then kind of figure out what's been done, what should have been done, and then what's yet to be done. And, I would say with the Jimmy Fallon show, what's yet to be done by the sounds of things is they've actually taken time to build a team. Like most of these toxic cultures, whenever I do the research, and there's so much research, I think there's 38 case studies I looked at for the toxic culture book, is almost none of them spent time away together for a couple of days to talk about what kind of human beings they are, what their differences were, what their similarities were. Human connection drives collaboration, right? But, figure out what should have been done. What you don't want to point the finger of blame. What you want to do is undertake a listening and a learning exercise. And then the next thing really is to move quickly. Like if you need to do a review, and I would always encourage, particularly if a toxic culture's hit the media, an independent review. Right, somebody independent, preferably someone with legal help, like a barrister. Get outside help. The toxic culture that that gave me a call, and they were like, "Oh, will you do the review?" I was like, "Well, no, we need somebody independent to do it, but I'll help you put the plan together to address not only what comes out of it, but also how you're going to change going forward." So I think, that independence is key. What you don't want to be seen is hiring your mates so you can mark your own homework, right? What you don't want either is a bunch of consultants to come in and tell you the things that you already know. You want someone who's really going to dig under the skin. They're going to look at, because I always say that, culture rots from the top. It really does. Because even if poor behavior isn't being demonstrated at the top, those people are still walking past it, or they're not doing enough. Kelly Clarkson talked about this, and I really admired Kelly Clarkson for the way that she dealt with her toxic culture, and she did like everything that I've described so far. Kelly Clarkson did this, and she talked about how she's sorry and no human being shouldn't be, kind of have to work in that kind of environment. Ellen didn't. Ellen came out and she said, I don't deserve this. I don't need this. I know who I am. I'm a good person. All of these, made it all about herself. She then apologized. I remember she started the next season of the show, and she kind of awkwardly apologized, and even that was criticized. But she did say, to be fair to Ellen, she did say, I've not been able to stay on top of everything. I've relied on others to do their job. And that's fair enough. Because often, and I talk about this layer of tar between senior leaders and managers and day to day, is sometimes things just get stuck in the middle, and senior leaders don't often find out. But it's senior leaders' job to go and find out. Don't just sit there waiting to be told, or don't make the assumption that everything's okay. All right, you've got to really, get under it. And this is why I always say that an audit department should be running their engagement survey, because they're best placed to be objective about these things. Anyway, so yeah, move quickly. What's the timeline? And don't make it too long. There was a consulting company here in Australia. It faced a number of serious allegations, and they said, right, we're going to undertake a review, and it was going to take 5 months. It's like, so no, you're clearly not taking this seriously enough. And I think the CEO ended up moving on. Got to be quick. What's the timeline? Keep communicating it. What have you done? Make sure that no one can say, oh, you've gone missing. Oh, we haven't heard anything about this. Right? It's proper crisis communication management. For the book, I interviewed Alex Cram. So Alex is a crisis communications expert based in Melbourne in Australia. Fabulous guy, massive brain, but just knows communication inside and out. And his views on this is you've got to keep communicating to other people. Don't wait to be asked for information. What's the timeline? Even if you're in progress, you tell people things are in progress, but you're telling them you're not waiting to be asked. And then at the end of it, what you're not going to do is when you get the report back, don't try and sell the positives. I saw a lot of this when I was reviewing all the toxic cultures. People come out and go, well, it said that we're great. We've been vindicated. Now, the way to address this is to say, we've done a thorough investigation. Here's what we found. But what you don't want to be doing is kind of holding a trophy up and go, we were right, they were wrong. Because, some of these allegations, I talk about combating cultures is culture's a feeling. Culture is who we are and what we do. That's what culture is, who we are and what we do. So some people's perception of culture is different to others. So you have to investigate all these allegations. But from time to time, and I spoke with a lawyer on this as well. He said from time to time, the people who make the allegations are actually the problem themselves. And it's a classic thing of, well, there's no smoke without fire. It's like, yeah, what about smoke machines? There are some smoke machines in some businesses who are just creating smoke. So this is why you want to investigate it thoroughly. For the most part, though, what the investigation will uncover, at the very least, it will uncover apathy, poor process, poor governance, some level of poor behavior, or the fact that the organization's simply taken its eye off the ball. But it will uncover, it's likely to uncover some serious, kind of defects in the organization, behavioral defects, process defects, those kind of things that need to be addressed. And then what you've got to do is talk about the action that you're going to take to resolve the situation. You're going to do this publicly if it's made it into the media. And this is what, the Jimmy Fallon show hasn't done any of this. And so people continue to point the finger, and the media at this stage, when I'm recording this, they're still like, he's silent on this. He's quiet on it. And he could stop all of that by actually coming out and saying, this is what we're going to do. And then the last part of that is to actually reset the culture. Is to be honest about what was found. It's to give employees the opportunity then to go, right, let's talk about the behaviors we want to see from each other at all levels. Let's talk about how we're going to work together. Let's talk about where the work takes place. Let's talk about how we're going to use technology to support collaboration. Let's talk about timelines, guidelines, deadlines. Let's talk about creativity and how we're actually going to do that. Let's talk about how we're going to resolve differences. Let's make sure that we don't turn it into a pleasant culture by agreeing to disagree and sending passive aggressive emails at 4:00 every night. Let's reset the culture. Let's write it down, and let's hold ourselves to that new standard such that the organization and its culture never appears in the media ever again. There we go. that's your Culture and Coffee podcast for today. Have a fabulous day wherever you are. Ta-ra for now.